our esteemed guest speaker, who's graciously agreed to share their expertise with us today. And after that, we'll dive right into the presentation, followed by a Q&A session at the end. So your questions are very important. Make sure to jot them down. Online, you have a Q&A chat that you can submit your questions. We'll make sure to get those all addressed at the end. So for those of you not familiar with Flat Earth Networking, we are a cybersecurity consultancy. What sets us apart is that we're committed to first understanding your business needs and then working with your existing technology team to identify any gaps you may have in your cybersecurity program and then creating bespoke solutions to help fill in those gaps. We strongly believe in continuous learning and fostering strong relationships, which is why events like this are so important to us. We're always looking for ways to connect with the community, share information, and grow together. Now, on to the main event. We are really fortunate to have with us Trey Ford. Trey is the Chief Security and Trust Officer for Bugcrowd. He has 25 years experience in offensive and defensive cybersecurity. Trey is on the advisory committee for the Center for Cybersecurity Policy and Law, and is also on the advisory board for Black Hat. He's going to talk with us about several things today that may touch on pen testing or bug bounties, interacting with boards at a strategic level and things along those lines, and also how to engage the ethical hacker community. That's a huge topic because the reality is there are far more people outside of your organizations who have a widely diverse set of skills and experiences that can help strengthen your cybersecurity programs. We think you're going to walk away with some valuable insight and actionable takeaways from the talk today. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Trey Ford.
Well, howdy folks, thanks for having me out, and what's better than lunch? It's so cold here. I grew up in Kansas City, I moved to Texas, apologies to Indy. I think the Colts are the only team we haven't beat in the regular season as a Chiefs fan, so sorry for that. Point of order, if you have questions, I can stand here and talk all day, but that gets old. If you've got something that pops up and you want to ask a question, send it. You don't have to wait till the end. The dialogue is what's more important. I care more about what you take away from this conversation than what I put out there, if that's fair. Is that cool? All right, so my name is Trey Ford. I serve at Bugcrowd. I was running Black Hat. I was the global general manager at Black Hat when I met this guy named Casey John Ellis 13 years ago. They had some happy hour at the office. I was working late, trying to finish up a CFP. And there's this Australian guy, super cheeky, great accent. And he has this idea about disclosure. And he starts telling me about disclosure and how important it is. I'm like, well, yeah, it is. He's like, well, it's really dangerous. I'm like, yes, it is. But the research and the disclosure process, it's important. I do it every day. Nobody does it every day. I do it every day. I run Black Hat. Oh. Casey the next morning was going to give his seed round pitch down on Sand Hill Road. And I met Casey the night before Bugcrowd became a company. And so I've been an advisor to him over the last 13 years and joined full-time at Bugcrowd about a year ago. It's one thing to be on the outside asking dumb questions and kind of pressure testing ideas and providing feedback and sometimes playing conscientious objector for what were great ideas. But running inside, I've got a whole new perspective and appreciation on how to partner with y'all. So I want to explore that space with you a little bit today. My name's Trey. I fancy myself a thought partner. We're all on the internet. We hear about thought leaders and people that have big opinions. I'm convinced that ideas come and go, but what matters more is how we think about things. And so I'd like to process ideas and pressure test them and argue not to win, but for clarity. That's probably one of my biggest areas of growth over the last, 5-10 years. If you look at my resume across the bottom, it looks like I can't hold down a job. There's probably some truth to that. I just got out of college a couple years ago. I went back after 20 years in industry and decided to pursue my degree. I had a couple of interactions with the government where I couldn't certify a testimony because I didn't have a degree. I've been working on the internet since 1993, and you have to have a piece of paper to do that. So I went back to night school. And so for those of you that choose to go to night school or are currently doing that, my heart's with you. It's worthwhile. It's a noble journey. But I think it's important to verify and validate that you don't have to have a degree to contribute in this space. I think that's important to speak to. Experience matters, and diversity of experience matters, and we'll push into that a little bit more. Are y'all familiar with the name Bob Lord? Do you guys know who Bob is? So Bob was the CISO at Twitter as Twitter came online and became what it is today. He was the CISO behind Alex Stamos at Yahoo. So he was the guy that received and dealt with the Russian breach and the massive compromise that was Yahoo. He went on to CISA, and what he was helping drive was the Secure by Design initiative. Great mind who's seen some things, and something he's impressed from his time on the speaking to the board and to the CEO team, the C staff at Yahoo, and continuously impressed upon us from the federal government is this notion that we work against human adversaries. The work that we do every day, we work against human adversaries that organize their work into campaigns. I think it's important to talk about the bad guys and gals as humans. They all have a boss, they all have a mortgage to pay, they're all working in campaigns. And so as we organize our defenses, as we organize our programs, I think it's important to think about who we're working against and how they operate, because that informs a lot of how not only we run our business, but how we communicate that back to leadership. So what do security leaders need? These are the questions we're asking, but I think these questions are table stakes. And I guess the font's a little small, but there's 3 questions I think we're all asking, and we have to have some level of positive control, some level of confidence and conviction around, am I vulnerable? Where? And are my programs working? Now, I spent some time in private equity, and I didn't push into that in my resume, but I spent 2.5 years at a top 10 private equity firm that bought software as a service B2B SaaS type of companies. Spent a lot of time. It was a $100 billion fund. It was huge. We had 100 companies. I've helped hire and transition about 50 CISOs in my time. Can I tell you how weird it is being a CISO interviewing a CISO, especially with a baby face like mine? Really awkward. And it's not that I'm measuring them against me. It feels that way. I guess this is the human natural response. What I'm effectively doing is trying to ask and answer the question with them, do you really want this job? I know that you're a CISO, I know you know what you're doing, but this job at this company in these circumstances? And I think it's important to be honest with ourselves that there are areas of specialization in your background that makes you a strong security leader, helps narrow and focus what you can contribute, but also informs the conditions for your success in development and executing your program. Roughly fair? These questions are the questions we as security teams are constantly asking and trying to answer internally. Do you think the board actually cares about these questions? They trust that we do. They know that we need to have that answer. And this is our area of expertise. But the board's not great job patching, said no board or CEO ever. They don't care. What they do care about is, what does this mean to the business? What does this mean to our customers? What does this mean to delivering goods and services? And how do we marry these risks, these loss scenarios, these impacts to the market, to our investors, our fiduciary duty, our duty of loyalty and care, and to our customers and our partners? And so this is what most CISOs bring back to their quarterly business reviews with the executive leadership team, and they brief on the board. Look at all of our projects, look at the stuff, and here's the statuses. Thanks for coming into work today. Is that offensive? It's a little uncomfortable, but we all deliver that report. But what does it mean to the business? I want to unpack this a little bit because we need to crystallize how we talk about the work we do and narrow that focus. Again, we work against human adversaries who organize their work into campaigns. The work that we do, this is table stakes. What it means to the business and how we measure those outcomes is what I want to press into. Who doesn't get a pen test? We spend all of our energy putting, I'm going to call them jelly beans, but your budget into people, process, and technology. We all have it. This is the standard business school answer to the CISO interview. Well, how do you think about your program? People, process, technology. I build great teams. I like to organize processes. We got certifications. We do all this stuff. We keep really busy. We keep late nights. We all run hard. The measure of that performance is answering the question, am I vulnerable right now? And you get that picture once a year, like a Christmas card. I love AI for really silly photos, but that's what you do. You give a Christmas card to your auditor. You give it to your customers. You give it to your partners and your regulators. And that's great, and that's enough. We've done this for a very long time. The good news is our developers only ship product and software once a year, right? Right before the pen test? It's a terrifying concept because we know that's not true. So the question then is, why do we do it? And the answer is we have to. It's not negotiable, but it is a point in time. How many of y'all pen test your entire surface area, all of your applications, all of your services, everything you have connected or put out to market? Nobody. Nobody. It's just like your audit. Audits, in theory, are hiring an adult to come check our work. And what they get is this nice little Japanese Zen garden where you brushed and combed the sand and the rocks are polished and it's beautiful. And the audit scope looks really nice for the observation period. But the rest of the company, the rest of your real estate, the rest of your technology does not look the same way. It also features the Baader-Meinhof principle. You guys familiar with Baader-Meinhof? I'm going to throw a fancy word around for a minute. Recency bias. How many of you guys like red Jeeps? I decided one day I was going to buy a red Jeep, so I started shopping for a red Jeep. You know how many red Jeeps I started seeing on the road? Everywhere, yes. And this happens with all kinds of things. The same phenomenon happens with your pen test and all of your research. So you like this one pen test company. You have a special firm that you like to work with. Two phenomenon happen. So I spent a lot of time at Black Hat. We bring in the best research. We spend a lot of time pulling it apart. We put it out there and build this big stage. And the folks that you see presenting from, I'll call it Acme Corp, Wile E. Coyote gave a great talk, and man, Roadrunner's funny. I want to do my pen test with those folks. Do you think you get those folks on that pen test? No. No, you got whoever was on the bench. Well, I really want Wile E. Coyote. It's going to be a couple months. That's cool, right? Okay, fine. This translates as well to the pen test work and even your own internal testing teams. You become specialized or get passionate about cross-site request forgery or remote file inclusion, all these types of interesting attack vectors or whatever you're currently working on, and that's what you see. And in our reports, that's what you get. And what you've lost now is the diversity of experience, of perspective, of tooling and technology. These are the dimensions where we start narrowing the scope, not only in which assets are in scope for your pen test, but how diverse and rich and complex the testing expertise becomes. So objectivity is what we're striving for, which is extremely hard. Does anyone think they're objective about themselves? I mean, we try to be, but can we be objective about ourselves? Absolutely not. So if objectivity is hard, why is it hard? Well, first, it's hard to find. We can't see it ourselves. You might take a look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, and that's the best you got. But how did I perform in that meeting? How did I receive that bad news? Objective feedback's really hard to experience. I think we've all either seen or experienced or been a part of an intervention of some kind. We're like, listen, we really need to talk. It's uncomfortable. And how do you facilitate that? Do you immediately stop and say, wow, thanks, I bet that was hard to tell me? Not a chance. But we should, and that's part of management coaching. But to operationalize that just for ourselves, let alone our team, let alone our company, how many of y'all give out a high five and a thank you when someone tells you something's wrong as a company? In the old days, that was the cease and desist and the power asymmetry with a researcher trying to tell you there's something vulnerable. We've done a lot of work on vulnerability disclosure programs and safe harbor policies, but frankly, the law's not friendly that way. We'll go into that in a moment. It's hard to share, we talked about that, and it's hard to put into practice. So how do we facilitate this level of objectivity? If we speak to our prior biases as cyber experts, thinking about, am I vulnerable? Where am I vulnerable? If we're going to be objective about our program, how are we pressure testing this? If an audit's not accurate and a pen test is a point-in-time picture with all kinds of bias and narrow scoping into it, how do we achieve objectivity in our programs to measure those outcomes? This is an eye chart, and I apologize for that. I'm going to step through it fairly quickly. Of course, admitting that we're human. So we have pride, we have biases and fallacies. Have you guys seen your fallacy.is, like your fallacy is or your bias.is? Okay, really cool website, both of them. They break down all the different biases and fallacies. They have a really cheap poster. You can get it framed and put it on your wall. I have it on my wall at home. Not because I want to sound smart on calls. Everybody wants to sound smart on calls. But what this helps me do is, I think we all have a default, especially mathematical, computer science, cybersecurity spaces. We spend a lot of time arguing with really smart people. And our natural tendency is to argue to win. And what this tool for me is a reminder that I'm human, the person I'm arguing with is human, and we want to look for clarity and truth. And there can be multiple truths based upon vantage point and context. And so it's important to understand that, but how do you unpack that? Useful tools. Momentum and vulnerability. How many of us have been in those business meetings where, well, why do we do this? This seems like the dumbest way to do it. That's the way we've always done it. Valid answer. Or my favorite, and this was one of the most painful things I ever experienced as a young consultant. It's hard to say that. I'm older than I think. Why would you do this way? This looks dumb, and you are very articulate and smart. Well, young man, let me explain to you. We didn't have your technology, we didn't have these ideas, and we had to build this from scratch. If you sit down with Whitfield Diffie or any of the folks behind the RSA algorithm and ask, what was it like? Like this stuff powers the internet. And they look at you with fear and trembling in their eyes and say, this was the best we could come up with, it's deeply flawed. And you realize, wow. So momentum, there's reasons for it, but we need to dignify the humanity and the constraints. But we have to admit we're human and we operate within those constraints. Second, demonstrating safety. Moving our concept of operations to one of continuous improvement. Sounds like a fluffy platitude, but I think it's important to underscore. We go to market, and if you walk through Best Buy or surf the internet, everybody's products are awesome, and they're perfect, and they're safe, and they have little secure stamps on them. It's a process. We're on a journey. And every time you have one of these conversations, the question is, how do I create the psychological safety to say we are on a journey? And if you look at like the FAIR methodology for scoring risk, they don't talk about vulnerabilities. They talk about a vulnerability event because a vulnerability has a life cycle. And so if we think about these cascading life cycles, this is a journey where we're dealing with this. This deals with your health and your fitness and recovering from injuries and colds, same kind of thing. What we want to do is open inside the company paths for disclosure. Some of these are more comfortable than others. Marketing, peer reviews, marketing peer reviews. You're writing a document, your marketing selects, the copy editors are reviewing stuff, the subject matter experts are making sure it's true. Poor Joe Sullivan got held to account, Tim Brown at SolarWinds got held to account for some marketing slicks he never saw because it was representing the security of SolarWinds. Peer reviews are important. Engineering, you get a pull request, same concept, but for technology. Security, your VDP and bug bounty program, if someone's gonna tell you something's not great or dangerous, we need to welcome that and facilitate that. HR, 360 feedback reviews, very painful and uncomfortable conversations. Legal has the anonymous and whistleblower hotlines for anonymous reporting. We trust that's anonymous, we hope it's anonymous, but in reality, every other corner of the business has this concept of let us know. We want to welcome that perspective. We need to open that up. I think the most offensive thing I will say is this: offensive security in my mind is the truly best and ultimate objective measure of our security programs. We put all our jelly beans, all our budget, into people, into process and technology. If you're running an application security program and you have an AppSec team today, you have a couple of people in it, you've got some toys, you got some DAST and SAST and some other stuff sitting in your CI/CD pipeline, you're doing some integration testing, you're introducing friction into the developer deployment process, that cost is gonna add up easily to a couple $1 million a year, easily, if you do any meaningful AppSec investment. Everything we're doing, from the people to all the processes, all the toys we buy, at the end of the day, the only way to measure how's it working and where am I vulnerable right now is that offensive assessment, that pen test once a year, and you hope it's enough. What we want to do is get to a place where we can quantify and measure that security outcome, not with that annual snapshot, but trend it at a higher resolution, with higher confidence, with higher diversity and confidence in the ways it's being tested. We want to see where those things are. That's going to correlate. That vulnerability you found out there in production correlates as a proxy indicator to a couple things not happening. We knew about the vulnerability, but we didn't patch it. We turned a hard gate into a soft gate. We simply accepted the risk because the developer could. There's process gaps, there's program gaps, but we want to move beyond subjective security assessments. Any of y'all using the cybersecurity framework, CSF? You're auditing against that? You know, one low hand. So in private equity, one of our favorite benchmarks was a risk-backed CSF score, the cybersecurity framework from NIST, back to the boards. At the Fortune 500 companies I worked for, same thing. You know what's really great about that? A couple long dinners with the auditor, we could squeeze a couple basis points here and a couple percentage points here. And over time, we got from a whatever to a whatever, but there's a lot of subjectivity in the interpretation and the scoring. If you're vulnerable on this input on this website right now remotely, that's real, that's objective, it's non-negotiable. And all this other stuff allowed it to become true. And how do we score that over time? The upside of practicing objectivity for bug bounty and disclosure programs, I think, is fairly straightforward. For those of you that work for small companies or deal with acquisitions from larger companies, it's probably the strongest proxy indicator in my experience after 2.5 years in private equity. All right, I don't care about your policies and procedures. I really don't care. You wrote them for an audit. You probably don't follow them. You tell me you've got EDR everywhere. You tell me you've got all the logs. When I ask you, cool, you've got firewall and all this stuff on all the things. Tell me about your inventory. Well, you know, finance has a spreadsheet they update once a year. That's really important. That's great. But you just told me that 100%, which means the numerator, the denominator, I'm going all the way back to like second grade. These things match. Those are big words, Trey. That's pretty mean. Scary. But what I can tell you is this. If you're running a bounty program, 1, you're willing to say, I want to hear about it. Number 2, you're willing to say, I acknowledge this vulnerability. And 3, someone's going to fix it. But if that trend line shows that those vulnerabilities are closing, and you have an external signal now that's saying, look, we haven't seen SQL injection in 5 years. These classes of vulnerabilities we've been killing off systematically through reference architectures, through pre-baked routines. We're handling all these things, working with the developers and partnering with them. You've got a relationship between security and engineering that is receiving and operationalizing all this stuff. Does that tell a story about your security program? You bet it does. My diligence conversations with companies with healthy and frankly high bounty payouts, high reward programs, they took security seriously, they operationalized it. You saw the security and the engineering team playing like Pippen and Jordan with no-look passes. They had each other's back. For you, when do security incidents come in? Not like the JIRA ticket at Tuesday at 10 a.m. They come in roughly about your third cocktail on Friday night on happy hour. 7 o'clock, team's good, high five, it's been a great week, we knocked some stuff out. Oh crap, who's gonna get to the office first to start the pot of coffee? We've got a long weekend ahead. That's a bad day. It happens all the time. When we operationalize continuous improvement and objectivity, what we've done is created a facility where folks can bring us what would have been a website exploit, it's vulnerable, and turn that into a validated ticket that gets worked and sent to engineering. These things improve. You get to spend more time, less pager load, lower stress, it helps. But programs, effectively what it's going to drive is a galvanizing, what unites forces in conflict more than a common enemy? Nothing, absolutely nothing. You have a problem that we're going to own together, and the outcomes reflect on the company and the relationship with our investors, with our customers, but with the research public, and that drives adoption. How you handle it, it's like the old adage, they don't care what you said, they cared how you made them feel. When the research public is receiving this information from you, thanks for sending that to me, I've got a question about this submission, can you help me reproduce this? You do this responsibly and actively closing these things out, that actually helps your go-to-market. That helps with a number of other facets. So questions to anticipate from the board. You showed me your project slide. Looks like you guys are busy. I haven't thanked you for coming into work today, but thank you. If you weren't, we wouldn't be having this conversation. What does this mean? What are the greatest threats to delivering the goods and services? Do y'all all have risk registers? Yeah. I got some real still, slow smiles. Everyone needs a risk register. Generally there's 2. There's the one that you document and the one that you have nightmares about that you don't really want to put in writing yet. I would recommend for the board, you're going to have 2. One is these are the worst possible things that can happen, and the risk committee is working to manage these down, and we're making really hard trade-offs. Lean on our liberal arts education, right? Constraint is the start of creativity. Those constraints are going to come back, and what you're now doing when you go to the board is saying, my CIO wouldn't fund me. This guy is killing us. We're gonna get owned. Or the risk committee has met. This is what we're most concerned with. We've made really hard trade-offs because the budget gave us this. We need help, or we're just gonna have to accept this risk. So we can accept it, transfer it, do something about it. This is where we are. Well, sadly, still 60% of the CISOs still report to a CIO or CTO. That's still a fact. It's changing, but it's still a fact. That budget conversation shouldn't be a risk acceptance where you said, I'm sorry, I just can't fund it. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to take 10% off of your budget this year. That was a risk acceptance. When we go back to the board saying, look, here are the constraints we're operating in. We've struggled, we've strove, we're doing the best we can, this is what's left. That conversation is now risk buried. What happens to our customers and stakeholders when and if business processes fall out of alignment with security processes? How do you measure that? I work for a bounty company, guys. The answer is obvious. The answer is offensive security. This is your heartbeat. So once a year Christmas card photo, I'm on the road. I got photos of my kids this morning. I'd lose my mind if I didn't. A once a year photo of your security program, that trend line is how you tell that story. And if engineering is not partnering and you're just piling them up, do any of you know exactly how many publicly accessible, exploitable vulnerabilities you have on your platforms right now? Right now? No, probably not. You might be working one. You don't have to acknowledge that. How many thousand vulnerabilities do you have off your internal network vulnerability scan right now and you have no idea where to start? There's a lot. There's more than is rational. How do we prioritize that? It's fairly straightforward. This is what I think is one of the truly most objective ways to think about this, is through offensive security. I don't work in sales. I'm not going to give you the commercial, but I want you to know who we are and what we do. I work for Bugcrowd. For the last 13 years, we've been working with the research community to help our customers find their vulnerabilities and understand what their surface area is. We've built this platform that has 13 years of telemetry. We have our crowd match technology that says, this guy joined us some years ago. He only knew some cross-site scripting, but look at his arc and all the things. We're not going to tell his story to you, but when you say, I'm looking for 3 researchers with expertise in these technology stacks in this vertical that might be available, I know what his capacity, his velocity, his accuracy rate are, and we can pull in the right folks for those types of exercises. So we help you, of course, discover not just the vulnerabilities, but your surface area. You have to know what you have available, manage that, and then help defend it. Through this continuous process, this is to you fully automated. And what we want to do is turn that 7 p.m. third cocktail pager duty alert into a 10 a.m. Tuesday JIRA ticket where this is vulnerable, this can and might have been popped. Let's get this fixed, and security, go investigate in case anything happened, because we now have a signature on what that looks like. There are 4 principal modalities we bring to market right now to provide and answer those questions. If you're trying to find common vulnerabilities for compliance, that's a pen test. We have that. We can also do that in a continuous manner. Passively discovering the surface area, that's vulnerability disclosure. There are 3 Ps in vulnerability. You guys know what a vulnerability disclosure program is. Think back to 9/11. If you see something, say something. Kind of cool, except yeah, you've got a vulnerability. I'm a big company. How about you shut up and not tell anybody? Here's a cease and desist. Good talk? Good talk. There are 3 Ps in a vulnerability disclosure program. First is a policy. It's this notion of safe harbor. I'm not going to come after you if you tell me in good faith. I just want to know about it. And you're creating legal safety in the United States and around the world. It's frankly unsafe to be doing this. So we have to suspend the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Frankly, the Wiretap Act is part of it. There's a number of things that go into this. So the policy that creates the safe harbor. The second is a point of contact. So for some folks, that's email. There's an RFC for your security.txt under your domain, kind of like robots.txt, same thing. I think basis points of a % are actually fully compliant with the RFC, but that's fine. You have to have a place to be notified. You have to do something with it. That's the process, the 3rd P. How do you process those inbound vulnerabilities? I want to respond, I want to acknowledge, he's some random dude on the internet. I don't know him, but he gave us a vulnerability. All right, we received it. Okay, that's ugly. I've received it. I've verified it. This is real. Thank you. We're going to get to work on this. And then let them know it's closed. Have a policy, a point of contact, and a process. That's a VDP. Assess the full security posture across people, process, and technology. Any of y'all doing red team engagements right now? Or have? Well, you want to. All right. So this is the scary one. All right, so let me get this straight. I'm going to invite somebody to do a pen test, but it's going to be sneaky. We're not going to know where they're coming from. Not only are they going to come in and pivot and get access to things, we're going to say, look, here's the scary flags, go find them. And you're going to do it willfully without detection, like you're going to try to hide from my SOC. What we're doing is we're weaponizing that pen test, but we're adding tradecraft and process, and there'll be somebody that's quarterbacking the process and giving approval for every step. Someone sneezes at a keyboard, they got permission before they sent that command. But what they're looking to do is also exercise your detection and response organization. So it's not just a full assessment, it's exercising your blue team as well. And so it harmonizes, and the lessons learned are organization changing. If your security team is getting blown off by leadership, you've spent enough jelly beans. How secure is secure enough? Very hard question to answer. A red team helps light up the Christmas tree and say, okay, we have some gaps. That's what the red team is ultimately for. And then finally, proactively discovering flaws that pen testing in a vulnerability disclosure program may not find. This is the idea, and this is where the economics start going into. We pay for a pen test. That's a controllable cost, right? You have a sense of what a pen test costs every year, and it varies by a number of things. The dirty secret about, any of y'all pen testers have a history of pen testing? All right, there's a dirty secret on pen testing. You get a scope, you get a source, we're gonna schedule it on a time, and we're gonna do the work. I've got 10 days to do my assessment, I'm gonna run all my scans, I'm gonna start validating, I'm gonna start doing some stuff. My mission is to find 3 to 5 juicy vulnerabilities. Once I find those, I'm writing a report. Do you think I'm covering the rest of all your stuff? No, I've proven it's possible, and that's the report. You're paying for effort. Paying for effort. You bought 10 days of work. What you really want to do is pay for results. You just spent whatever it was, 20 or 50 or 60 grand for those 3 to 5 vulnerabilities and a bunch of other stuff in a report. But you can actually pay for every flaw. And now you've economically incentivized the best in the world to take on these projects and to look forward, keep feeding them to you. And so you're paying for those results. There's a longer conversation, it's too early to do this over drinks, on how to fund those, because if, I keep picking on you, but you're a terrible developer. I'm sure your friends are proud of you. But his department is the one department that is constantly vulnerable, and we've emptied our bounty payout fund because his code sucks. I'm really sorry. It's not his fault. He's actually using an unsafe, like not a memory safe language. He's using some old stuff. He's still on, I don't know, Perl, because he hates himself. He's punks like hip rock. He's punk rock. Cool. But how do we refund the bounty pool to keep people researching? That's a fun one. We can come back to that if you want to talk about it. But these are the modalities, the ways to express objective feedback mechanically to measure these outcomes inside our security programs. Any questions? Have I talked your ear off? Because that's kind of a lot.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So anytime I hear people talking about the crowd and researchers and things like that, the ethical hacking community, how do you guys go about validating and authenticating that these are truly good researchers who are going to stay inside the lines?
They're not. Well, let's decompose that genuinely and honestly. So if I were to do a select star, the research community around the globe, for a VDP program that's public, anybody can be testing, you want all the perspective you can. Do you want them background checked? Do you want to know where they live? You don't really care. If you see something, let us know. And this is free feedback. I'm from Texas. I grew up in Kansas City, so I can reference the great prophet Doc Holliday. There's no money in it. A VDP, you're not actually doing anything for the researcher. These folks are looking to build a reputation and a track record and a resume so they can do more meaningful work. Then you move into managed bug bounty programs. So now you're economically incentivizing this research. Now, in some of these scenarios, I don't know, you're financial or you're a bank. That application is not going to work if you can't validate your identity as inside the United States. Wire transfers and some of this stuff isn't going to work. But you may or may not care where they're from. You'll have limited functionality based upon that, but that may or may not matter. Now you're going to step into some organizations that have contracts and relationships with the United States government or other specific limitations where you have to have background checks or sovereignty locations, and that matters. So we have a facility where the researchers can sign up for validation and background checks and these sorts of things. And so that union select starts going down as you add attributes to that query. When you move into penetration testing, wow, I'm actually not asking you to find a vulnerability, I'm asking you to pop it and then find your way into my network and then pull data out. Those folks are clearly going to have background checks, are going to have more than just the identity aspects of we know who they are, we know where they're from, we've got information on how to pay them from the bounty stuff, but now he's a terrible developer and he's a terrible hacker. There's a signal to noise ratio, there's a batting average, there's a completions issue. And so we also want to be working with folks that have a demonstrated background, a broad skill set, an understanding of which technology stacks they're good at. And then ultimately, they're going to ship meaningful, accurate, well-written bug reports. So that's a step. Now, red team, you're gonna do it and not tell anybody? You're coming all the way in and you're gonna try to get away with it sneaky-like? You're gonna do that with a crowd? That sounds like a terrible idea. So we had to facilitate a platform that provides the operational security, the tradecraft into that process, has specialized tools and the implants and all of the covert communications channels and these sorts of things to facilitate that work. And you get to sign off on every step. Okay, listen, we found these things. We think these are interesting. This is probably vulnerable to these exploits. This one exploit has a risk of knocking the service over, but it always works. which ones do you want to do, and so you'll approve every stage, and you can set the bounds on what the background check requirements and sovereignty requirements are. So the honest starting answer is, what do you know about the crowd and how do you know they're not criminals? You don't. You start with everybody. You want it all. Maximum diversity, maximum expertise, maximum coverage. And as you move through the modalities and the specializations, and then your specific requirements for the type of engagement or the business you're in, we can narrow that down. Long answer to a very simple question. I'm very sorry for that.
Awesome.
Any other questions? Anything from online? Please.
I guess it's like getting, approval to like do a pen test. That's pretty easy to do. But as far as going beyond that, I mean, what do you suggest for getting approval to go to red teaming or bug bounty programs?
Okay, so the question on the table, I'm repeating it for the internet, is aside from the process for getting an approval for a penetration test, what is the process for getting approval and alignment and support for a red team engagement? From a budgetary standpoint, the CFO speaks line itemese. If it's not on the budget, it doesn't exist. And so the first challenge is, do you have a line item for it? And the answer is no. They're going to have a pen test budget. And so the idea is that's supposed to get cheaper, except we keep buying companies and building technology, so it's going to get bigger and more targets, so that goes up over time. There's the diversity requirement. Generally speaking, every couple of years, you're expected to change an auditor, you're expected to change your pen tester, those sorts of things happen. I don't have that problem because I have all the testers, so I can just specify who's going to be doing the work. If you're not doing a pen test, for the sake of argument, you're not a real company. You don't have an ISO or a SOC or a PCI or a HIPAA, like you haven't had anybody check your work, so go with God, good luck, but you have to do a pen test. That's table stakes today, especially if you're going to sell to real companies, Fortune 500s, like you're looking to go up market into enterprise. Business to consumer, unless you're concerned about a hearing with some agency, everyone gets a pen test. Red team. Red team, you've got a sizable investment in both offensive, red, and defensive blue in your organization. You probably have an AppSec team. You may have a couple folks that are pen test capable. You definitely have either a security operations center or a managed detection response partner that's doing some of this work. Flat Earth is covering you, something. And the hard question is, am I vulnerable where, and how do I measure the performance? That slide. How do you know in your SOC that you have all the right logs? How do you know that the richness of all of those logs is sufficient to find something erroneous or malicious? How do you know that the alerts in the triage process for those alerts that turn into incidents, that turn into live incidents that could be, I'm not a lawyer, I can't pronounce breach. I don't know how to use that word in a sentence. I'm not legally allowed to say breach, because I don't know what that is. How do I know? So a pen test, you're probably not going to see it. You get the IPs before a pen test engagement because you want to know where it's from in case you see something. But how do you know? And the only honest answer is an objective measure. And so either we think we've got it covered and we're going to test it, or you're saying, listen, I've been budget flat for 3 years. We've bought 4 other companies. I have 4 SIMs that won't talk to each other. None of them are co-termed. I have 5 different EDRs because we have some legacy stuff that won't run whatever my preferred tool is. I'm trying not to name vendors. And I have 2 people that run all 5 EDRs. Like, what is that? They're not certified on more than 1 or 2 of them. Like, they don't know how to operate them. How do I know we're going to see what happens? And the honest answer is you don't know until you test it. And so what you're looking for is, look, my resting heart rate has been terrible for 6 months. I've been losing sleep since this last incident. I can't get questions back out of my SOC, and they're good people doing hard work, and we're operating under budgetary constraints. The best way, I would go to the board or the audit committee saying, look, here's my concerns. I feel good about this. We talked about our greatest risk to the company. This is the piece I can't quantify. I would like to do this. Plan it and then walk away. You don't know how long the fuse is on that grenade, but it's eventually going to pop. You're going to call saying, what does that cost? And so you want a couple of those bids in your pocket. Anytime you talk to the executive leadership team, an ELT in their quarterly business review, QBR, or you go to the board, you have to answer 3 questions without saying them out loud. What do I need to know? Why do I care? What do you need from me? In the board briefing, you're providing them, they don't care about your project stuff. They don't want to know. They want to know about the risk and the business threats. What do I need to know? Why do I care? You care because my expertise is cyber. This is what I do. We're doing all the right things. These questions that I told you are the highest risks, what you wanted to know. I lack confidence and conviction in this area, and the only way to test it is this. And then you drop the grenade. You walk away. You leave it there. One of the most powerful things you can say in either an argument or negotiation or a request is, I don't know. I don't have a good data-grounded answer. If you're asking my opinion, you're asking my gut, I can give you that, but I can't give you a data-led answer. Well, what's that gonna take? What do you need from me? You have to have a proposal or some bids organized. It's gonna take this many heads, it's gonna take this much time, it's gonna take this much money. Here's the jelly beans, this is what it's gonna take. The constraints you operate in your budget don't come from your boss. They actually flow down from the board. It starts with this EBITDA, the performance and margins targets that are given to the CEO and the CFO from the board, yes? From that, they carve it up and it goes in the business and there are all these things that are moving around, and the constraints are established. When you're operating within those constraints, you go back to the board, we talk about the risk. I've seen the most magical thing happen 3 times in my career. It's this one phenomenon. The only people in the universe that can look at the CEO and say, we're gonna forgive your EBITDA target for his request for this amount of money, get him taken care of, the rest of the targets stay in place. You just got direct board budget through that forgiveness. I've watched it happen. But you've got to be answering those 3 questions elegantly. Fair answer?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we've got a question from the live stream, and it's a whole lot of words, but I can sum it up just by saying AI.
AI.
Yeah, but basically the question is, do you feel as though AI is going to increase the ability of the threat actors, therefore changing how the process would work for doing the testing and auditing that you're talking about?
Great. Do you want me to repeat that, or can everybody see that question?
No, they got it.
Okay. All right. So the question on the table is AI question mark. And that's such a great question. There are 3 principal ways I would ask you to frame and organize your thinking around AI. It's a tool, it's a target, it's a threat. Yes, it's a tool. We're all using Claude and ChatGPT and Grok and Gemini. We're doing things for productivity. It's great. And there's just a couple of folks in here my age. Are you guys all familiar with the game Lemmings from back in the day? You know what a lemming is? All right, terrible analogy. I'll be very fast with this. So there's this game back in like the 286, 386 days. So this dates me. And they drop these little stupid animals, creatures, into your screen, a little 480 by 640, I think it was, itty bitty. They're dropping these little things on and they start walking. And they do the dumbest stuff. They walk into fire, they walk off cliffs, they fall on spikes. They do terrible things. They catch fire, it's terrible. And so the first thing you do is you build gates between them and all of them queue up in a pin. All right, cool. I need to build a little ladder so they'll climb up to this thing and go across the hole. And then I put a slide in, they'll drop in over here. You do all this stuff to guide the lemmings from where they're dropping in to the exit. Sounds straightforward, right? AI is exactly like a lemming. It's going to go absolutely wild with everything you ask it to do, and it's going to do everything it can to be helpful and answer your question, including make up great things like my 5-year-old does. Dad, I'm the fastest guy in the world. Really? Tell me more, buddy. He just wants me to be proud of him. He wants to make me happy, and AI is the same way. So if you take some notion of Jimmy Neutron boy genius, has no life experience, no wisdom, terrifyingly smart, super fast, but has no idea the gravitas of the impact of what it's doing, we're getting closer to this notion of AI. So as a tool, it does the things where it doesn't need caffeine, it doesn't need lunch, it doesn't need to go to the bathroom, it doesn't need a good night's sleep. It does the boring stuff. In engineering, we call this toil. It reduces toil. It does stuff really fast, but has no idea what to do with it. Yeah? Is that roughly fair? It's a tool. It's a target. Some of us are building, everyone starts with a chatbot. Why does everyone start with a freaking chatbot for their AI projects on their websites? In manufacturing, if they can save 1 or 2/10% improvement in their process when they're making oil or tape or whatever it is they're making, that translates to millions of dollars. Well, if you can pollute that, ground truth data, or you can manipulate that model to telling you what everybody's querying, imagine if you could get all of your boss's Google queries. Or he could figure out what email he keeps searching for. There's some interesting things you start to divine, and when you pollute an LLM or a chatbot, you start getting stuff out. It's a target. I think the question's focused on, is it a threat? How is it a threat? Will it make attackers more efficient? The answer is yes. It's designed to make humans more efficient. That is its principal purpose. The large financials are usually the fastest to adopt technology, right behind attackers. Attackers are going to use everything they can to be efficient and fast. Human and adversaries who organize their work into campaigns, and I'll add, to pay the mortgage. They're working against outcomes that are financially motivating. So yes, it's going to make them more efficient. There's the old trope, I think there's a fallacy in it that, attackers, we have to be perfect and attackers have to find one hole. Because we don't have layers of security and all these other things that go into it. While that's not completely accurate, what they're looking to do is drive down their cost, trying to drive down their time to value. They are business people. They're working in campaigns for milestones to achieve an outcome. And they don't tell us, here's the rules of the game. These are the sidelines. That's the end zone. Watch my Chiefs push back to your Colts. No, it's not that simple. We don't know if they want our data. We don't know if they want our systems. Did any of you deal with the drift breach? The SalesLoft drift breach? Nobody? Okay, that's a first. All right, but you're aware of this, right? All right, you visit a website and it pops up a little chat bot. They're like, hey, I see that you're back looking at red Jeeps again. Can I talk to you about them? And it's going to answer every question you've got about every model, every feature, all the things. And so Drift had this really cool AI power. They were one of the early ones, AI chatbot that knows all of the inventory, all the stuff, but also knows where you've been browsing. And so it'll tell you about whatever you want to know. Well, part of that, knowing that you've been on the site 13 times and you have a thing for the red, Rubicon, Unlimited, Jeep, it's because there's a Salesforce record tied to this IP address and this browser ID. And once you said, hey, I'm Jimmy. Well, hey, Jimmy, welcome back. Last time we talked about this. You want to know more? We're going to run a special next month. You want to hear about it? I'll connect you to Ryan. That chatbot, pretty cool. He clearly shows value, but on occasion, if you're a sales rep targeting this company or this person, you can connect to a live rep right now. That's pretty neat. SalesLoft, Drift, they were attacked. And they took all the session tokens from Drift to access Salesforce records for all the companies that used Drift. Were they trying to hack Drift? Were they trying to hack Salesforce? Or were they trying to attack the services connected to those platforms for target companies that were customers of those technologies? It's the latter. We don't know who we're dealing with when we're playing this game of cyber defense. Will it make them more efficient? Yes. But that sword cuts both ways. So we need to be thoughtful. And I go all the way back to my prior recommendation of thinking, we work against human adversaries that organize their work into campaigns. Where are they reducing toil? Where are they becoming more efficient? And our outcome, in my opinion, should be to make it more expensive and more dangerous to be evil. We're slowing them down. We're increasing the likelihood of getting caught and raising the human factors that make their jobs dangerous. Is that fair?
Very fair.
Really ranty answers to your questions. I'm sorry. Wow. Any other questions? Any more pain? Yeah, let's have it.
So we're a small shop and we deliver products, we do software development, but it's primarily disconnected systems for DoD. So if you see my code online, someone somewhere else, there's some Marine that's plugged a thing in somewhere. So
why is it always Marines?
it could be Army. They do it too. But most of the time when people talk about pen testing and bug bounty and that kind of thing, they're talking about your cloud platform that you put online or whatever.
Sure.
We don't do any of that. So how can I apply this to my organization? I have a bunch of servers in a closet somewhere that supports him doing his job, and that's about it.
Yep,
We have
makes
one
sense.
website, it was made in 1998, so it's got a couple of pictures and some text that doesn't go anywhere.
It has nothing to do with what you do, and your stuff's all air-gapped and zipper nipper, all these things. Yeah, got it. All right. So the question on the table is, I have to echo it for the internet. This gentleman works for a small company, software shop, and they build governmental capabilities. And they have a marketing website that has nothing to do with what they actually do. And all this technology lives in Iraq or in a SCIF or in specialized government installations, not connected to the internet. How do you make use of what I'm offering or what we do? Generally speaking, hardware is not connected to the internet. We just released, and I should have given you a QR code because we all security people love QR codes. We just released the Inside of the Mind of the CISO report. And so in this report, we talk about the shapes of research and a bunch of other stuff. One of those fascinating increases we've seen in our bounty community is hardware vulnerabilities. Hardware is generally not online. We have people signing up saying, hey, we want to get a group of folks together with expertise in these areas. Remember I talked about our crowd-mounted technology. We got the right folks, we got the goods, we know the people. We bring them out and they would tear apart these things. They would strip down the layers, they would do a code dump. They would like reverse engineer and start doing crazy things. Super fun. Wireless specialist, all like, if there is a technology, a stack, an application, we've got folks for it. I mean, RACF, like whatever you want to get into, we've got folks for it. For your systems, I would recommend something like this. So we can always drop in a VPN. VPNs suck because they break tools and routing and a whole bunch of other things. Strangely, zero trust networking is a lot more efficient for tool development. So a lot of our researchers, part of this is they're not researching just for you. They've got this exploit concept, and what they're going to do is build up a test harness across as much surface area as possible, and then they're going to do their iteration. And so it's injecting and inspecting across all this stuff. Well, for some targets, you can bounce through a zero trust relationship and do the same thing, and it's actually more intelligent than a VPN, which is great. For your environment, now hardware is expensive, it's not terribly expensive, it's cheaper than cloud over time, that kind of thing. But you probably have a dev, a test, a QA, UAT, like you have different environments that are fairly similar. You could set this up and say, hey, we want to do a private bounty, we want a group of folks that are coming through this way, we're going to monitor it in all these ways, and they do this testing. You may require, they have to be US citizens on US soil with background checks, like there's going to be some of that ceremony. If you want to skip that and say, forget all that noise, I'm going to get an exemption and I want the best in the world. And we're going to meet them at an undisclosed location in a warehouse and be off the side of a base. We're going to fly people in on helicopters, and what we're going to do is hack this for 3 days. And we're going to have a live hackathon. And so they're going to sign a release, there'll be proof to come in, only those folks get to do the work. We're going to provision, like they bring their software, bring their tools, but you're going to use our hardware and you're going to leave it behind. So we maintain custodianship of all of this stuff. You do the work, and we're going to pay them dearly for very cool vulns. Go for it. And one of two things happens. They give you a couple things, or okay, knock it off. You've owned this 50 ways. This, we're going to rebuild this. This is now out of scope. Everybody stop banging on this one. And we have folks that have applications that can't be exposed to the public, can't be given away. And so we do live on-site hackathons with specialists on specific technologies, techniques, these sorts of things to do exactly this. So the modalities and the expressions of how we bring the offensive minds to interact with your technology, regardless of what it is fairly diverse. There's a lot of options there. Great question, thank you for that. Were there any other questions, or are we completely blown our time?
No, we're coming up to the top of the hour, which is
Okay.
good. But one of the questions that I actually had, and you had mentioned it earlier today about inventory and attack surface.
Yep.
In two different parts of your conversation.
Yeah.
How critical is it that an organization has fully enumerated their inventory and know their attack surface before they engage with a company like yours and engage with the Bugcrowd?
I like that question. So I don't have to echo your question. I keep wanting to do that. Do you have to do it before you talk to us? The answer is no. We can do that for you. So we bought a company called Informer a couple of years ago. It's been tied into our platform, so we can do asset discovery. Every one of our researchers, if you say, listen, everything tied to these domains is ours, here's our IP space or whatever it is you have, the researchers are going to go out and do that open source intel, the OSINT, to identify that stuff. What do you think is more secure? Your core hardened applications, the one you pay for a pen test every year, or all the other crap that's tied to it? We're always going to go to the edge. Are we going to go to the front door? Or we go to the smoker door that's propped open? Like, we all know the answer to this question. So one, it's paramount that you understand your public attack service and all of your systems inventory. You have to know what's there. Have you guys ever toured a castle or a military installation? What's really neat, they just kind of have this fence and this moat that wanders off into God knows where. No, it's around the edge of the castle because they know where the castle is. It's all right here and the important stuff goes in there. If you don't know where the edges of your real estate are, what are you doing? That's terrifying. Trust relationships, transitive trust relationships, whether it's a domain, whether it's your IAM platform inside of AWS, whether it's domain and part of how the DOM is set up, so you have trust in the cookies and all of your subdomains. Trust is a fascinating concept. Identity and access is terrifying. So you have to know, one, what's there, and two, how it's connected. There's a reason why identity architects get paid so much. It's freaking complicated. Do you have to have that answer before you talk to us? Absolutely not. We'll help you with it. The crowd will help you with it. That's also why I encourage a VDP, a disclosure program behind a managed program or a pen test. You need to know what all is out there, and you need to have a safe way of hearing about it. Internally, different question. We're not doing that for you, but I would argue, especially if there's a scenario where one, you're highly regulated in government, or you're looking at a private equity or VC type of capital event, you need to know what you have, and you need to be able to disclose, this stuff's end of life, this stuff's healthy, this stuff's under coverage, we have this many CrowdStrike licenses or Sentinel-1 or whatever it was we have, and we have this many assets. We need to be able to answer those questions with authority, with confidence, and with conviction, and we don't always have that. So I think it's important. I think it's foundational. It goes back to the, am I vulnerable, where am I vulnerable, and how am I doing? If you can't measure these things, it's a really uncomfortable place to step into a board or executive briefing. You've got to know what you got. Great question. Any parting shots? Anything else?
I think we're good.
Thank you for helping me out.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you so much. As we wrap up today, I just want to again express sincere gratitude for you guys taking your time to be here live in person and online. It's your presence and participation that makes these worthwhile and for us to do. And hopefully you've got some insights to take back and some new perspectives that can help you in your journey. And just know that our door is always open. If you have any questions about anything moving forward, about this topic or other topics, or if you just want to connect, we're always happy to hear from you. So we look forward to hearing about your future successes. And again, thanks for being here today. Have a great afternoon. And thanks again, Trey. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a good afternoon.